Coming up on this Monday edition of Daybreak, North Korea slams South Korea, saying Seoul can forget about talks for as long as South Korean officials believe that they can achieve unification through the absorption of the North. South Korea's presidential office, the government and the ruling party agree that the nation's minimum wage should be up to a suitable level, but they've failed to agree upon a set amount. Plus, 3 British teenagers believed to have been on their way to joining Islamic State militants in Syria have been flown back to the UK and arrested. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Monday, March 16th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning, South Korea has denied it's making preparations for unification through absorption of the North after a senior official's remarks on the subject drew condemnation from Pyongyang. North Korea says it will not deal with Seoul officials until a South Korean committee charged with preparing for unification is dismantled. Our Kim Min-ji starts us off.
South Korea is pushing for peaceful unification, not unification through absorption. Seoul's Unification Ministry said Sunday that the government's unification preparations are not aimed at isolating North Korea, but for Pyongyang to join the global community.
It is a shame that the North is distorting the truth and denouncing the South Korean government and the Unification Preparation Committee. The North should respond positively to our efforts toward peaceful unification.
The comments come after the North condemned Seoul for alleged plans to unify the two Koreas through absorption. North Korea was referring to recent remarks made by Chung Jong-uk, a vice chairman of Seoul's Presidential Committee for Unification Preparation, who said that unification through absorption was an option. Chung also said there was a study group looking into the possibility. He later denied the remark, saying his choice of words was inappropriate. North Korea said it will not deal with South Korean authorities unless Seoul's presidential committee is disbanded, adding that unification through absorption is a daydream.
It's not that we don't know of any other process for unification or that we don't have the ability. If the puppet group recklessly resists, we will fight for unification in our own way.
The North also demanded that South Korean President Park Geun-hye apologize and clarify her position on the issue, as she is the chair of Seoul's Unification Committee. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Representatives from the government, the presidential office and the ruling Saenuri party have agreed to raise the minimum wage to a suitable level. The 3 groups failed, however, to define what suitable is during their meeting on Sunday. A senior official from the presidential office also called for cooperation to boost the economy and stabilize people's livelihoods. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
The government, ruling party and the presidential office should work together to pass pending bills that will create more jobs for our people and especially for the younger generation.
Also at the meeting, officials did not discuss the issue of whether or not Korea should allow the US to deploy a missile defense system on its soil. The topic that was expected to be on the table is causing a bipartisan divide in local politics, with conservatives supporting the system and liberals opposing it, saying it would undermine Korea's sovereignty. Final preparations are underway for Tuesday's planned meeting between President Park Geun-hye and the leaders of Korea's 2 main political parties. Officials say ruling Saenuri Party chairman Kim Moo-sung and Moon Jae-in, the chairman of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy, will discuss a wide range of state affairs with the president at the Blue House. They'll also talk about President Park's recent trip to the Middle East, as well as the economic livelihoods of the Korean people. Now, this idea for the meeting was brought up earlier this month when the 3 met briefly ahead of a ceremony for Korea's Independence Movement Day. The meeting comes at a sensitive time for the president. who has been struggling with low approval ratings and criticism about her leadership style. She also faces Moon Jae-in for the first time since she beat him in the 2012 presidential election. Now, U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Daniel Russell and China's Assistant Minister of Foreign Affairs Lao Jiangchao will both be in Korea this week for discussions on regional affairs and issues of mutual interest. Russell arrives on Monday for a two-day visit. He's going to meet with senior officials, including South Korea's Deputy Foreign Minister Lee Kyung-soo. Now, the Chinese official's four-day visit started yesterday on Sunday, and he is also going to meet with the same South Korean official. The Foreign Ministry official told Korea-based Yonhap News that the hottest topic of debate would be China's move to set up the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank that's seen as a counterbalance to the US-Japan-led Asian Development Bank. The possible deployment of the THAAD US missile defense system to South Korea, which China opposes, is also expected to come up at the talks. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang says that if Japanese leaders could correct their view of the country's wartime past, it would open the way for growth in China-Japan relations. Speaking to reporters at a news conference in Beijing on Sunday, Li added that since this year marks the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II, China-Japan relations now face both a test and an opportunity. He went on to stress that it is the responsibility of national leaders to face up to their country's past. The Chinese premier says progress in this area could lay a firmer foundation for the development of bilateral trade and economic cooperation between the two countries. Korea's finance minister is calling on the leaders of Korea's public and private financial institutions to support the government's efforts to push through structural reforms aimed at boosting the sluggish economic growth in the country. Speaking at a dinner in Seoul on Sunday, Choi Kyung-hwan said they should come up with new value-added services and create more employment opportunities, specifically in the financial sector. Now, the number of jobs in that sector has been contracting in recent years, a point that has disappointed the minister and the government. Earlier this month, Chae said the sector was broken and can't even pay taxes because it's not making money. He also pointed out that the country's financial industry sector is only making up about 5% of the country's GDP. That's far short of the government's 10% target rate. And Korea's economic growth fell short of the G20 average for a fourth straight year in 2014, and there's little sign the sluggish pace of growth will pick up this year either. For more on the growing concerns this trend could continue for a fair while, Hwang Jie reports.
The Korean economy continues to fail to outperform the average growth posted by G20 countries. Recent data from the OECD shows that Korea grew at a slower pace than the G20 average for a fourth straight year in 2014. That's the longest streak for Asia's fourth largest economy. In the years between 1999 and 2010, Korea fell short of the G20 average only 2 times, in 2003 and 2005. While the International Monetary Fund expects the Korean economy to grow faster this year than in 2014 by 3.7%, major economic data released so far this year shows that pace of growth might be hard to obtain. Korea's output, consumption, and exports were all down this year. The Bank of Korea recently cut its key interest rate to a historic low of 1.75% as a way of propping up the ailing economy. But the rate cut also points to a need for a trim of the central bank's new growth forecast for the economy this year, set to be released next month. The BOK currently expects the domestic economy to grow 3.4% this year. Now the attention is focused on the effects that the rate cut and the government's stimulus measures could have on boosting the domestic economy. A local research institute says the government's measures to prop up the economy will raise the country's growth rate by over 0.3 percentage points. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
Now, if you're thinking about going green with your next auto purchase, this next report could help you make up your mind. Hybrid cars offer savings on fuel costs and are clearly better for the environment, but are those benefits enough to make up for the higher sticker price? On this week's Industry Insight, our Kim Ji-yeon kicks the tyres of one of the most popular hybrids on the market.
Despite falling oil prices, Korean drivers are increasingly turning to hybrid cars, powered by a combination of gas and electricity. Around 5,200 hybrids were sold during the first 2 months of this year alone, led by Hyundai Motor's Sonata Hybrid. The driving force behind the hybrid's popularity is a change in public perception, as myths surrounding hybrids are debunked. When consumers hear the words electric vehicle, they think of plugs, cords, and wall sockets. But today's hybrids don't necessarily have to be plugged in. Auto engineers have developed a system known as regenerative braking that helps cars retrieve and store energy. Energy normally lost when the car slows down or stops is reclaimed and sent to the rechargeable batteries. And then the gas engine also transfers energy to the batteries automatically. Another common misconception is that hybrid drivers are paying more just to save the environment. But in reality, it's not all about altruism. Drivers can actually save when they go hybrid. The sticker price for a Sonata Hybrid starts at $27,000, just $1,800 more than a non-hybrid Sonata. Assuming gas price remains at $1.30 per liter, Hyundai says consumers can save nearly $3,200 over a 5-year period.
A drop in gas prices doesn't automatically mean that it's going to be cheaper to keep a gasoline-based model. Right now, gas is at about $1,471 or $1.30 per liter, which means it's not cheap. And consumers think the low oil price trend isn't going to last long.
Also, drivers who buy a hybrid this year will be eligible for various local tax cuts and government subsidies. With hybrids that emit less than 97 grams of carbon dioxide per kilometer, which includes the Sonata Hybrid, Toyota's Prius line, the Lexus CT200H, and the Ford Fusion, drivers can save up to $3,600. Hyundai says it plans to boost the Sonata Hybrid's fuel efficiency by 25%. It's also planning to expand its lineup to draw the average driver, starting with its first plug-in hybrid set to debut at the Seoul Motor Show in April. Hyundai Motor Group Chairman Chung Mong-gu laid out plans to invest $73 billion into its facilities and R&D divisions through 2018. 85% of that will go towards improving standards, including plans to develop future hybrids. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, Korean researchers have come up with a new technology in the field of microencapsulation that could change the future of the display panel industry in Korea and how we view the world on our TVs and smartphones. Our Ji Myung-gil has more.
Screen displays are important components of devices we use every day, like smartphones, laptops, and TVs. Often we stare at two-dimensional images on these screens. But a team of experts at the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology have developed technology that they say will help viewers see images three-dimensionally.
We use molecular engineering to create rubber-covered microcapsules that can move around in liquid and change shape and color, making displayed images look three-dimensional.
They say their technology, which microcapsules photonic crystals, can be used for next-generation reflective-type color displays that can bend or fold. What's more, these microcapsules have characteristics that allows them to change colors based on varying temperatures, which would result in a more brilliant display panel. The team expects the technology will take off in the flexible display market, which is estimated to reach some $4 billion in 2018, and it doesn't stop there.
Not only can we make flexible displays using the microcapsule technology, but we can also use it for microlasers and special paints.
The KAIST team's research on microcapsulating technology was published in the scientific journal Advanced Materials. 지명길, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the global headlines we're following this Monday morning in Seoul. For that, we connect to Eunice Kim, standing by at the news centre. Good morning, Eunice.
Good Monday morning to you, Mark. 3 British teenagers on their way to Syria this time were stopped by Turkish authorities who were alerted by UK police. A police spokesman said the 2 17-year-olds and 1 19-year-old were sent back to the UK late Saturday local time, where they were arrested by counter-terrorism officers. The trio are believed to have had plans to join the Islamic State group. They're being held in a London police station on suspicion of planning terror attacks. The swift intervention was triggered on Friday when the 2 younger teens were reported missing from their northwest London homes. Counterterrorism officials quickly alerted authorities in Turkey, who stopped the young men when they arrived. Meanwhile, the joint Iraqi military Shiite militia operation to free Tikrit has stalled since Friday as the joint operation awaits reinforcements while trading sniper fire and defusing booby traps. This as Kurdish Peshmerga fighters report the jihadist militants could be using chlorine as chemical weapons in Iraq's north and west. One town's mayor told Reuters a storage container filled with chlorine and bombs containing chlorine were discovered by the joint forces last week when they entered the town of Al-Alam. A new documentary out of Russia is showing a President Vladimir Putin more aggressive on Crimea and Ukraine. In the documentary titled The Path to the Motherland, aired on state TV on Sunday, President Putin says he was ready to put Russia's nuclear weapons on standby during escalating tensions over Crimea and Ukraine, citing the threat against former Moscow-backed Ukrainian leader Viktor Yanukovych. In a previously aired clip, the Russian leader, contrary to formal statements from his government earlier, says he had ordered Crimea's annexation weeks before the region held a referendum, saying it was Russia's historical territory and that the lives of Russians living there were in danger. Authorities have made an arrest in last week's shooting in Ferguson that had left 2 police officers hit and wounded. St. Louis County Prosecutor Robert McCulloch said Jeffrey Williams was charged with 2 counts of first-degree assault, among other charges. He also said the 20-year-old claimed he did not intend on shooting the officers, but at a man with whom he was having a dispute. The investigation into the late-night shooting outside the Ferguson Police Department meanwhile continues. And the annual session of China's top legislative body drew to a close on Sunday. There were no great surprises in terms of policies, while lawmakers put emphasis on reforms and promoting the rule of law. Our Sun Jung-in has this story.
This year's National People's Congress session came to an end Sunday with a focus on maintaining the policy direction of what the leadership called the new normal. Under the conditions, the government aims to balance steady growth in a law-based society, which are the strategic goals President Xi Jinping has stuck to since taking power in 2012. The economy dominated the agenda as it comes at a time when China is wrestling with a continuing economic slowdown. Premier Li Keqiang said Beijing was prepared to take action to stimulate the economy and boost the market confidence, but warned the country would struggle to meet its annual growth target of around 7% this year. Lawmakers also put emphasis on deepening reforms and promoting the rule of law. The session reviewed a draft amendment to the country's legislation law in which it seeks to set clear limits on administrative power in order to protect public interest. The top judiciary also vowed greater justice by promoting transparency and sharing information between courts dotted around the country. Environmental protection was also high on the agenda as the Environment Ministry vowed comprehensive efforts to implement tougher measures against polluting firms. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
And a good Monday morning to you all as we kick things off with the 2015 Seoul International Marathon, which kicked off on Sunday morning at the Gwanghwamun Square in central Seoul and finished off at the Jamsil Sports Complex. And at the end of the long, grueling race, it was Wilson Erupe who came out on top. Now, the 27-year-old Kenyan who holds the event record from back in 2012 came very close to breaking his record as he finished with a final time of 2 hours, 6 minutes and 11 seconds to win his second career Seoul International Marathon. And while he takes home an $80,000 check for his victory, an incredible finish for Korea's Kim Sung-in over in the women's race as the Korean would finish second overall, coming in at a final time of 2 hours, 28 minutes and 20 seconds. And while the 2015 Seoul International Marathon took place throughout the streets of Seoul, the 2015 Short Track World Championship took place around the ice tracks in Moscow, Russia. And on Sunday, 2 Koreans claimed the gold medal in the 1,000-meter events. Now, first off, over on the men's side, Park Se-young would finish off the men's 1,000-meter event with a final time of 1 minute 25.115 seconds to claim the top podium spot. But that's not all. Over on the women's 1,000-meter event, it was the teenage sensation Choi Min-jung who had finished with a final time of 1 minute 32.73 seconds to win her first World Championship gold as Korea finishes with 2 gold medals in the event. Now, the 2015 women's golf season has been quite an interesting one, with Koreans winning 4 out of the 5 LPGA events so far, with the other victor being Lydia Ko, who's a Korean New Zealander. But the Koreans are also dominating the Ladies European Tour as Ryu So-yeon took home a trophy over the weekend. Now, the world number 2 Park In-bi would take the lead after the two first days of the event over in Hainan, China for the World Ladies Championship, but would have to settle with a second-place finish as Ryu So-yeon storms through in the final 2 days of the event, finishing off at 13 under par overall and beating Park In-bi by a single stroke. Now, still very early in the season, but the Koreans continue to dominate the 2015 season. Now, manager Uli Stilke of the Korean national football team has made it clear that he's going to find more hidden talents in the domestic league. And he wasn't kidding, as he was seen visiting a couple of K-League Classic matches over the weekend. Now, with his interpreter on his side, the 61-year-old head coach was first seen at the Suwon-Incheon match on Saturday as he kept a close eye on some of the players who he hopes to add on to the new roster. But the very next day, he would travel to Pohang, where he watched the 6-goal affair between the Pohang Steelers and the Ulsan Hyundai Tigers, asking that he gets as little attention as possible while he's watching the matches. Now, with the March friendly set to take place at the end of the month, he's expected to continue his trips around the nation to watch the domestic talents. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Well, spring has finally arrived. In fact, it will feel like mid-spring today. The temperatures will hike 4 to 5 degrees higher than the averages, hiking up to 16 in the capital and 22 for Gwangju. Now, these readings are usually we would have for the late April, so enjoy it. But beware of a big temperature gaps between lows and highs and dress accordingly. Now, the clouds will fade and it will give way to sunshine as the day moves along, and the air quality levels will remain at the normal level, but dry weather continues with dry weather advisory still in effect for most parts, and it's been a week now with the dry weather watch in place here in the capital, so take good care of your health. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. So while the daytime high here in Seoul will climb up to 16, the top temperatures in Daegu and Busan will rise to 20 and 18 this afternoon. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju Island and Daejeon should see a high of 17 and 19, and even Dokdo will hike up to 13 later on. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, those are the stories we're following on this Monday morning here in Seoul. Korea Today is coming up at the top of the hour, 7 a.m. Korea time. Have a wonderful day and do stay tuned to Arirang. Goodbye.